Fiery fascist leader named Chancellor of Germany. The Times, 1933. Hitler pledged to rule sanely. The Boston Herald, 1933. Hitler urged for the Nobel Peace Prize. The Times, 1939. For 6 years, newspaper headlines around the world painted Adolf Hitler as a savior, a charismatic leader who lifted his people from poverty, a reasonable man seeking only to restore Germany's dignity. Even Time magazine named him Man of the Year in 1938. But while the world's press celebrated Germany's recovery, something far more sinister was happening behind the scenes. Every factory that reopened, every highway that was built, every diplomatic meeting that promised peace, it was all part of the most elaborate deception in history. The man the world saw as a hero was systematically preparing for the most devastating war humanity had ever known. And almost no one saw it coming. Subscribe now, because this story of deception and preparation will blow your mind, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. January 1933. Germany is dying. 6 million unemployed. Families selling furniture for bread. The middle class has been wiped out by hyperinflation, so brutal that people needed wheelbarrows of cash to buy groceries. Hitler's solution? One of the most audacious financial cons in history. Meet Hjalmar Schacht, the financial mastermind who figured out how to fund the world's largest military buildup while the entire world was watching. His weapon? Fake money. The MIFO bills were IOUs issued by a dummy company that didn't really exist. Germany was essentially writing checks with no money in the bank, borrowing against the loot of future conquests. By 1939, they had pumped 12 billion Reichsmarks into war preparations, money Germany didn't have. But here's where it gets insane. Everything looked completely innocent. Those highways putting 600,000 Germans back to work? Designed for tank columns. Every curve calculated for heavy military vehicles. Strategic connections between military bases disguised as economic development. The Volkswagen factory promising a car for every German? Built to produce military vehicles. Those tractor factories sprouting across the country? Manufacturing tanks in disguise? IG Farben chemical plants making fertilizer and dyes? Developing synthetic rubber and fuel for a war machine that would soon be cut off from global supplies. The world applauded Germany's economic miracle. Unemployment dropped from 30% to 8%. Industrial production exploded by 60%. International observers praised Hitler's leadership. They were watching the most expensive war preparation in history and mistaking it for a recovery program. While economists celebrated, Hitler was systematically shredding every clause of the Treaty of Versailles, but so cleverly that nobody noticed until it was too late. The deception was breathtaking. German aircraft manufacturers were officially building civilian airliners. The Junkers Ju-52 passenger plane could be converted to a bomber in hours. The Heinkel He 111 mail plane was designed from day one as a medium bomber. German pilots trained at innocent flying clubs. By 1935, Germany had trained 4,000 civilian pilots, more than Britain and France's air forces combined. But the most shocking secret? Hitler was training his military in Soviet Russia. At secret bases deep in the USSR, German tank crews learned armored warfare, pilots practiced bombing runs, and chemical weapons specialists developed banned poison gases. The communist Soviet Union was helping the fascist Nazis prepare for war. When Hitler finally revealed his hand in March 1935, announcing the Luftwaffe, reintroducing conscription, expanding the army, the world's response was predictably outraged and pathetically weak. Britain filed protests, France threatened sanctions, the League of Nations condemned the violations. Nobody did anything. Hitler learned the crucial lesson: democracies would complain loudly but act weakly. He tested this theory repeatedly. March of 1936, German troops reoccupied the Rhineland. Hitler later admitted this was his most nervous moment. German forces had orders to withdraw if France mobilized. France did nothing. Each successful violation made the next one easier. Austria fell in 1938 to cheering crowds. Czechoslovakia was carved up at Munich, while the world applauded peace in our time. By 1939, Hitler controlled most of Central Europe without firing a shot. September 1936, Hitler unveiled the four-year plan, officially about economic independence, actually a blueprint for total war. The numbers are staggering. Steel production doubled. Aircraft production increased 400% in 5 years. But raw statistics don't capture the scope of what Hitler was building. Germany had no oil, no natural rubber, limited iron ore. The 4-year plan solved each vulnerability with massive investment in alternatives that seemed impossible. The Hermann Göring Works became Europe's largest industrial complex. 700,000 workers producing 40% of Germany's steel from low-grade ore that other countries considered useless. Synthetic fuel plants using coal liquefaction produce 4.2 million tons of artificial oil annually. Not enough for peace, but enough to sustain military operations until real oil fields could be captured. Buna synthetic rubber made from coal and limestone. By 1939, Germany was producing enough artificial rubber to equip an entire war machine. But the most important preparation wasn't industrial. It was psychological. An entire generation was being conditioned for war. The Hitler Youth militarized 8.7 million German children. Boys learned to march before they could read properly. Girls learned their highest calling was producing soldiers. Nazi propaganda subtly shifted from promising prosperity to preaching destiny. Germans were told they were a superior people cramped in inadequate territory, surrounded by inferior races occupying land that rightfully belonged to the Reich. Every German vacation became a pseudo-military exercise. Factory competitions were framed as economic warfare. Even entertainment was militarized. Films portrayed heroic German soldiers conquering inferior enemies. The psychological conditioning extended to dehumanizing future enemies. Jews became internal parasites. Slavs became primitive subhumans. Western democracies became decadent and corrupt. By 1939, Germany wasn't just ready for war. An entire population was psychologically prepared for conquest and sacrifice. While Germany rearmed, Hitler's generals were revolutionizing warfare itself and testing their theories in live combat. Traditional 1930s military thinking was still trapped in World War I. Generals planned for grinding campaigns with fixed fronts and massive artillery bombardments. The French built the Maginot Line based on this outdated thinking. German officers who had served as junior officers in World War I drew different lessons. Speed, coordination, and integration could achieve what brute force had failed to accomplish. Enter Blitzkrieg, not just speed, but seamless coordination between tanks, aircraft, infantry, and artillery. Every German tank had a radio for instant communication. Most Allied tanks had no radios at all. The Stuka dive bomber became the symbol of Blitzkrieg, but its effectiveness came from integration, not innovation. The Stuka was actually slow and vulnerable, but it provided precise close air support coordinated with advancing ground forces. Hitler's generals tested these concepts in the Spanish Civil War from 1936 to 1939. The Condor Legion was officially volunteers, actually a live-fire testing ground for new weapons and tactics. April 26, 1937. The bombing of Guernica shocked the world with its brutality. From a military perspective, it was an experiment in terror bombing and civilian targeting. German analysts studied the psychological impact carefully, measuring the effectiveness of different bombing patterns. Spanish battlefields became laboratories for tank warfare. German crews tested armor tactics against Soviet-equipped Republican forces, revealing weaknesses that were corrected before World War II began. By September 1939, German forces had advantages that went far beyond numbers. They had experienced officers who had tested theories in combat. They had integrated command structures that could coordinate complex operations. Most importantly, they had confidence born from success. The Wehrmacht wasn't just a military, it was a learning organization that adapted faster than its enemies could respond. Hitler's final preparation was perhaps his most brilliant, manipulating the entire international system while appearing to seek peace. September 1938, the Munich crisis. Hitler claimed he only wanted to protect oppressed Germans in Czechoslovakia's Sudetenland. The real prize was Czech industry and strategic position. Czechoslovakia was one of Europe's most advanced industrial nations. Czech forces were well-equipped and prepared to fight, with French and Soviet guarantees of support. But Hitler understood that Western leaders desperately wanted to believe he could be reasoned with. At Munich, Hitler played the role of reasonable leader perfectly. He accepted international supervision, signed guarantees of Czech independence, and posed for photos with British Prime Minister Chamberlain. The results exceeded Hitler's wildest expectations. He gained the Sudetenland without firing a shot. Czech gold reserves worth over £6 million, the Skoda arms works, and most importantly, proof that the Western Allies wouldn't fight to stop German expansion. But Hitler's greatest triumph was the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact with Stalin in August 1939. This shocked the world, Nazi Germany allying with Communist Russia. But secret protocols divided Eastern Europe between them. Germany would take Western Poland, Russia would take Eastern Poland and the Baltic states. For Hitler, this solved his greatest strategic problem, the two-front war that had doomed Germany in World War I. With Soviet neutrality guaranteed, Hitler could focus his entire military against Poland, knowing France and Britain would face Germany alone. The result was Poland's complete isolation. British and French guarantees became meaningless when the Soviet Union joined Germany in partition rather than resistance. Hitler had achieved the impossible: diplomatic freedom to begin his war of conquest with minimal risk of effective opposition. September 1st, 1939, 4:45 a.m., the German battleship Schleswig-Holstein opens fire on Poland. World War II begins. But this wasn't the start of Hitler's war. It was the culmination of 6 years of systematic preparation that had transformed Germany from a broken nation into the most formidable military power on earth. Poland fell in 18 days, not through superior numbers, but superior coordination. Denmark and Norway collapsed in 2 months. France, the victor of World War I, surrendered in 6 weeks. By June 1940, Hitler controlled more of Europe than Napoleon at his peak. The economic miracle the world had celebrated funded the largest military buildup in history. The diplomatic agreements hailed as preserving peace actually isolated Germany's enemies. The social programs that restored German pride conditioned an entire population for total war. Hitler succeeded because he understood his enemies better than they understood themselves. He exploited their desire for peace, their economic vulnerabilities, their political divisions, and their desperate need to believe that reason would prevail over force. The signs were all visible. Economic policies that made no sense except as war preparation, military buildups disguised as defensive measures, diplomatic agreements that consistently favored aggression over stability. Yet the world's leaders chose to see what they wanted to see rather than what was actually happening. They trusted in good intentions while facing a leader who had spent 6 years systematically preparing for their destruction. The architect of war succeeded because the guardians of peace were unprepared. They hoped for the best while evil prepared for the worst. The lesson isn't just historical, it's a warning. In our interconnected world, the next great deception might be happening right now, disguised as something completely innocent. Are we paying attention this time? If this documentary blew your mind about Hitler's calculated preparation, smash that like button and subscribe for more untold stories from history. Drop a comment below. Which part shocked you most? The fake money scheme, the secret Soviet training, or how close the world came to missing the signs completely? And here's the crazy part. We've got an even more mind-blowing story coming next week about the Yom Kippur War, where a surprise attack on the holiest day nearly triggered World War III. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss it.